nice, isn't it, that we have candidates willing to take questions and be here with us, so we really appreciate it. Thank you. Who's got the first question for me? Okay, right here.
Come on, we got a whole bunch more questions than Joe got.
Okay. You said a lot of really good things, all the things that we want to hear, you know, as people that want to get rid of life to life. I'm a nurse at Pediatric Hospital here in Cincinnati, you all probably know where. And the mandates have been a horrible thing, obviously. A lot of people are walking away from healthcare because we're done. We're tired. We have 30-year careers at the same place in our whole career, and we're tired and we're done. And so I appreciate you talking about that. One thing you said, though, that really bothers me is the machines have to go in the elections. Every state, every county had problems. Even Ohio had issues. Trump won by way more than what we were told. The poll books are the problem. The electronic poll books get inflated. It's the canvass, not the audit. We don't want forensic audit. We want canvassing of the counties, because they are finding that
Do you know what a forensic audit would include? It would include actually doing confirmations of people that live in houses, how many votes they have, whether they voted in a count.
Don't just recount the votes that were already counted.
Well, I agree with you. In an audit, look, I'm a CPA. In an audit, you just don't go out and count the widgets. You go out and determine how many of the widgets came, how many left. You got to do all that too. A forensic audit is much more detailed than just recounting votes.
Do you believe the 2020 election was stolen?
I do believe it. But not in Ohio. But not in Ohio, because Trump won.
It doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, wait a minute. I know, but it does matter.
It's broken in Ohio too.
No,
Ohio
look,
has election issues too.
I know. I said they do. But I also said that in Ohio, Trump won. So I don't think the election for Trump was stolen.
Bullshit.
Okay, we're gonna stay respectful though, right? Everybody's gonna get their questions asked, but we're gonna stay respectful.
I don't even understand how Trump won. Trump won in Ohio.
Well, they think he actually won by a lot more.
It doesn't matter, he won.
Colorado just proved
Okay,
it.
hold on, we're gonna have another question over here. Please be quiet.
Jim, I apologize, that's very disrespectful to us and to you, so let's cool it, man. Okay, anyway, the whole issue, Jim, about the voter ID, and the nation wants to turn this into a race issue. Okay, I worked at the polls only one time in my life when Trump was running for the primary, because I was suspicious of what was gonna go on. I can tell you firsthand that the only way we're gonna safeguard this is at the point that the person enters into the voting place. If there was a way that there'd be the photo ID that could be confirmed that it's a legitimate photo ID. Because this person that's supposedly gonna check all this, they make you go for training, it's up to that person whether they're gonna do that right.
I agree with you.
So is there an electronic means for there to be the photo ID, a verification that this is a legitimate photo ID?
Yes. And by the way, here's what we should do. I agree with you. If you get, so right now, your license becomes a legitimate photo ID. You gotta take 5, my son just did it yesterday. You gotta take 5 pieces of, ID to get that photo ID. So that should be one of them. But if you don't have a driver's license, then the state should issue you a photo ID. And you should go through the same process. So you bring out 4 or 5 pieces. And in the end, you're either gonna come in with that driver's license, or you're gonna come in with a voter ID. See, the problem with the Democrats will say is, it's not fair, these people can't afford it. Hey, we're gonna give it to them free. We're gonna give it to them free.
Okay, I have another question here.
Yeah, hey, I heard a rumor, and you can clear this up, but that you publicly criticized Dr. Douglas Frank, Mike Lindell, and Donald Trump on the election fraud issue. Is that true or not?
That's just not true.
Okay, good.
I mean, I've only talked to, Mike Lindell I've talked to one time. Now, Joe knows him, has talked to him many times. And Dr. Frank I talked to one time on I can, on a text stream back and forth, which is public, that's it. And why would I say Donald Trump was crazy? Donald Trump's the guy that I stood up with when everybody else wasn't standing up with him. That's just amazing that people say that. I mean, it's kind of like I got a call the other day and said, do you know that I heard that in your town, they don't like you? It was like, where does that come from? In my town, I got 70% of the vote, and I got, and during my elections, I always got 70, 80, 90% of the vote. But somebody called in and said, well, I heard that your town doesn't even like you. I got the key to the city. I've got the Businessman of the Year award. I mean, my town actually appreciates me when, that's Joe. When he walks around, they come. When I'm in a restaurant like this, you know what I tell my wife? I'll be honest with you, I sit there with my head down. She says, those people are looking at you. I go, yeah, because they want to come over and say something. And I just want to eat. Just want to eat. And guess what? As soon as I get up, I go over to the table, I said, I just wanted to thank you for all you've done. But thank you for the question. And that's just.
Next question. Oh, I got another one over here real quick, and then.
What are you gonna do about all of these people out here that want to get jobs, that are being mandated to get the tests so that they don't have to take the masks, they have to take the mask, they gotta take the vaccine? My husband wants to retire and he has to go back to work and he can't do his job because he's lost his hearing. And I can't get a job in healthcare after spending 25 years in healthcare because I won't get a vaccine and I can't get a job. What are you gonna do about that? We've got a whole country. What are you gonna do about that in Ohio?
Well, first off, it should pass 248, that's the first part for sure. Second, you have to understand, and here's where the confusion comes. By the way, how many people like Tom Rentz? Tom Rentz is the number one advocate. Tom Rentz is the number one advocate against being forced to be mask mandated. Well, Tom Rentz endorsed me. All right, you can talk to Tom Rentz. So
All right, that's good.
I have the endorsement of Tom Rentz. I will also tell you that what we really have to do is we've got to get 248 passed. It's just that simple.
One more question here.
Two quick questions. Are you endorsing anyone for the U.S. Senate for the state of Ohio?
One thing I've learned is that you best to just continue. Look, here's what I tell people. So I'll tell you what I'll tell publicly. If you look, you could silo each one of the candidates into anywhere you want to silo them, but here's where you can silo them. If you like establishment, which some people do, you got Jane Timken and you got Dolan. Those would be establishment candidates. If you like somebody who is a career politician but a fighter, you can silo that. That's one silo, and you would put Josh Mandel in there. And then if you like the outsider candidate, who's a fighter, that's Mike Gibbons. So it depends on what you want. I mean, Jane Timken says she's a pro-Trump guy, a pro-Trump woman, but I remember the day she called me and was mad at me because I wouldn't endorse Donald Trump. So if you ever talk about who's the person who was with Trump from the beginning, none of the Senate candidates were with Trump from the beginning. Neither was Josh, neither was Gibbons, none of them. There was only one person who was with Trump, that was me.
Do you have another quick question?
Real quick question. I'm just curious. How did you meet Joe, and how did you go about selecting him for your lieutenant governor?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad that came up. So here's what happened. I ended up getting a group of conservatives to come together and start picking people who they thought who should be my lieutenant governor. We started out with about 40 names. We went down to 20 names. We went down to 10 names. We went down to 5 names. We went down to 2 names. The last 2 people, and I'll tell you the story because it's important. The last 2 people on the list, both were 100% supportive of Jim Renacci. One of them was Joe Knopp, and the other one was Ron Hood. Ron Hood was one of the last 2 people on my list. Ron Hood was calling me every day, telling me what a great candidate it would be for governor, but he wanted to be my lieutenant governor. All right? I came down to those 2, and I'll never forget, my final decision came down to, I went to Joe, and I said, Joe, if I pick Ron Hood, will you support the team? And Joe said, absolutely, we've got to get rid of Mike DeWine. When I went to Ron Hood and said, Ron, if I pick Joe, would you support the team? He said, absolutely not. So the decision was pretty simple. And I can tell you, that's what's so troubling about Ron Hood's decision to jump in the race. Because Ron, and Candace Keller was also, I was at an event in November with Candace Keller and Joe, where Candace stood up on stage and talked about what a great man Jim Renacci was. But the minute she found out I was picking Joe, who, by the way, she was trying to get Joe to run for governor. The minute I told her that I was picking Joe, or she knew I was picking Joe, she came back to me and said, you gotta pick Ron, you gotta pick Ron. And I said, why? We gotta pick Ron. And then as soon as I picked Joe, those two jumped into the race as governor and lieutenant governor. The reason I bring that story up is somewhat what Joe said. It's interesting. When they thought they were on my team, they were 100% behind me. I was the greatest governor in the state of Ohio. The minute I picked Joe, who they wanted on their team, is the minute they jumped into the race. That should tell you something about that ticket. And again, they're good people, but sometimes good people do crazy things.
All right, I've got another question right here.
Jane Timken has all of these commercials that Donald Trump is behind her 100%. Is that true? I can't see it.
Donald Trump has not endorsed anybody in the Senate race. If you watch the commercials, Jane Timken, he did support her for ORP chairwoman. She has gone overboard. She's gone overboard. Look, there's only one elected official he's ever endorsed, and that's me. There's only two candidates he's actually endorsed this cycle, and that is Kerry and Max Miller. He has not endorsed anybody else. By the way, I have Donald Trump's phone number. I have his phone. I just talked to him last Saturday. We're still friends. I'll tell you what he did tell me. Again, it's public. I don't care. I've said it already. He said, Renacci, the biggest problem you have is there's another guy in your race going to siphon off some votes and maybe cause you the opportunity to lose. And he said, I got to be able to endorse somebody who's going to win. He says, and I'm a little worried about that other guy. And I go, do you know the other guy's name? And he said, no. I just heard there's another guy in the race going to siphon off some of your votes.
He's silent.
But yeah,
Okay, right. One more question.
Actually, I just appreciate you and Joe's time here this evening, really do appreciate it. And you just hit upon what my concern is, because I worry, because I know all of us here, I want DeWine to no longer be our representative as governor for the state of Ohio. We need someone strong in that position that will stick up for our rights. And I'm concerned about the other candidates, like you say, siphoning away some of those votes. Do you think that those candidates may decide not to run in the primary, or do you think they'll stick with it? I just worry that DeWine's gonna potentially win because of those others in the race.
so Bob Paduchek, anybody know who Bob Paduchek is? Okay, Bob's the head of the Ohio Republican Party. You know what he's telling donors when they say, is DeWine going to win? He says, as long as Flystone's in the race, DeWine's going to win. So that's what he's telling people. Now look, for anybody out here that's a Flystone guy or woman, bless you. Joe got in for the right reasons. But this is a big state. And here's what I would tell you. There are a lot of voters, and nobody knows who everybody is. And the first time you run, you're lucky at best to get 10 to 15%. You're lucky. And that's a gift, because think about it. If you're traveling around, look, if I just talk, I don't know, maybe there's 100 people here today, but do the math. If there's 100 people here today, first off, it's not normal. Joe and I will tell you, there might be 25 people, there might be 50. Let's just say you average 50 people a night. All right, you travel around the state 5 days a week, that's 250 people. Multiply that times 4, that's 1,000 people a month. Multiply that times 12, that's 12,000 people a month. You think you got the pulse of 1 million people, and you've only talked to 12,000 people in a year. How do you win elections? Well, the 12,000 people can influence about 7 people. So take 12,000 times 7, you're now at 84,000 people. 84,000 people is 10% of the vote. That's about what you get traveling around the state. The only way you win is you gotta travel around the state like I just did. You gotta send out mailers. How many people got a mailer on mine? All right. How many people got a text message from Jim Renacci? All right. How many people got a phone call from Jim Renacci? Well, how many people took the phone call? You're part of the 700,000 that didn't take the phone call, but that's okay. I mean, how many people have seen our commercial on Fox? Okay. Well, I'm just telling you, these are all ways you get to people. If somebody, you know, I lost by 150,000 net votes in 2018, and we did a summary 5 days, 6 days before the election. I'm going to tell you the reason we lost. Because I got 98% of the Republicans, Sherrod Brown got 98% of the Democrats, but only 40% of the independents knew who Jim Renacci was. When only 40%, now I still got a lot of votes, even though 40% knew me. You know how many people know, you know how many Republicans know Jim Renacci right now? 75%. You know how many Republicans know Mike DeWine? 99.7%. You know how many Republicans know the other candidate? 11.7 voters. And nobody knows who everybody is. And the first time you run, you're lucky at best to get 10 to 15%. You're lucky. And that's a gift, because think about it. If you're traveling around, look, if I just talk, I don't know, maybe there's 100 people here today, but do the math. If there's 100 people here today, first off, it's not normal. Joe and I will tell you, there might be 25 people, there might be 50. Let's just say you average 50 people a night. All right, you travel around the state 5 days a week, that's 250 people. Multiply that times 4, that's 1,000 people a month. Multiply that times 12, that's 12,000 people a month. You think you got the pulse of 1 million people, and you've only talked to 12,000 people a year. How do you win elections? Well, the 12,000 people can influence about 7 people. So take 12,000 times 7, you're now at 84,000 people. 84,000 people is 10% of the vote. That's about what you get traveling around the state. The only way you win is you gotta travel around the state like I just did. You gotta send out mailers. How many people got a mailer on mine? All right. How many people got a text message from Jim Renacci? All right. How many people got a phone call from Jim Renacci? Well, how many people took the phone call? You're part of the 700,000 that didn't take the phone call, but that's okay. I mean, how many people have seen our commercial on Fox? Okay. Well, I'm just telling you, these are all ways you get to people. If somebody, you know, I lost by 150,000 net votes in 2018, and we did a summary 5 days, 6 days before the election. I'm going to tell you the reason we lost. Because I got 98% of the Republicans, Sherrod Brown got 98% of the Democrats, but only 40% of the independents knew who Jim Renacci was. When only 40%, now I still got a lot of votes, even though 40% knew me. Do you know how many people know, you know how many Republicans know Jim Renacci right now? 75%. You know how many Republicans know Mike DeWine? 99.7%. You know how many Republicans know the other candidate? 11.7%. That's it. So do you really believe that the 89% who don't know the other guy are going to vote for him? I know he'll tell you they're going to vote for him. They're not. People, how many of you have voted for somebody you don't know? Seriously. Well, you might get a couple hands. You don't vote for somebody you don't know. You know what I've been working on for the last 3 months? Not the 75% that know me, the 25% that don't know me. Joe and I, everything we do is about the 25% that don't know me, because here's what we learned. If the 25% who don't know me get to know me, we get 80% of their votes. Now tonight, hopefully that worked out for the people here. And maybe, just maybe, I was in a room on Sunday night with the wine voters. You know, that's the other thing. You've got to go into places people don't like you. I went into a room with the wine voters, and I walked out, And at least 10 women came up to me on Sunday and said, I came here because I support DeWine. I'm leaving here supporting you. That's the difference. That's the difference.
All right, we'll take a few more questions. Here's one.
Mr. Renacci said that you supported equal opportunities for everybody and that you would protect our individual rights. I am an RN for 42 years. It's been over 2 years, 2.5 since COVID outbreak began, and I cannot work because, again, the vaccine. I nearly died from angioedema twice from hyperimmune reactions after getting a flu shot and a TB test, okay? And all vaccines contain metal. Metals are poison. They are toxic to all humans and mammals. Masks do not stop COVID. It says so right on the box, made in China. And I will not poison myself by rebreathing my own excrement. I will not.
Wait a minute, can I ask you a question? If the person next to you is wearing a mask, do you think you're gonna tell her to take it off?
I am going to try to educate them because when I went into nursing school in 1977, I knew that the 5 decades old research from OSHA showed without a doubt that masks do not stop the spread of disease.
I'm not arguing.
So I promote freedom of a lie.
Whoa.
I cannot work. I will not work in a hospital that forces me to wear a mask. What are you going to do about the healthcare crisis? There's no caregivers that are competent to take care of these people. They're still doing treatments that cause people to die. And they're using remdesivir, which had a 54% mortality in clinical trials in 2015. And now when you couple it with a ventilator as the mandatory treatment for COVID, the death rate goes up to 80%.
So first off, I mean, I'm gonna protect your rights and I'm gonna protect her rights. And I'm just pointing the finger, don't take it the wrong way. If she wants to wear a mask, she should be allowed to wear a mask.
I will never wear a mask.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying whoever. And by the way, that's their right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's their right. That's what I don't understand. If somebody wants to take a vaccine, it's their right.
But I can't work.
Look, let me finish. The decision should be between the individual and the physician, not somebody in the audience saying you shouldn't wear it. If the person that decides to get the vaccine,
I can't support myself.
I am not saying.
Corporations are making us do this.
Look, and I said 248 is the only way to fix it. And I would sign 248. I would sign
All right,
248.
that's good.
But I'm not sure what else I can tell you other than right now. What's it? Well, again, I could stand up here and be a candidate and say, I'm going to just step down and say they can't do it. The problem is, but it's not the law. And that's, if it was the law, we wouldn't need 248. Look, if you want a candidate who's not going to violate the law, I'm not your guy. I'm a candidate who's going to defend the law, stand for the law, and I'm going to do things to change the law. I don't believe you should be required to get a vaccine, but I am not going to be a governor who breaks the law. I mean, no governor should ever, nobody running for office should ever say they are going to break the law.
So one thing, Jim, I'm just going to add to that from a personal, if you don't mind, that I feel like we always leave out when we talk about vaccines. One of the main reasons when all of this came out, and I've worked in healthcare my whole career, I'm not a nurse, but I've been in medical sales my whole life, and one thing that I've learned is that I wasn't aware of, is that as a pro-life person, the number one reason I didn't take the shot is because of the use of aborted fetal cell line for the testing, and it's actually in some of the vaccines. And I've argued with both sides on this, I've gone back and forth. If you're truly pro-life, We are never gonna overturn abortion if we keep allowing these drug companies to use the cells of aborted babies.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Which one of the vaccines, because there's only one vaccine that used the.
No, they all use it. They all use it, and they all use it in the testing. And a lot of people are very confused on this. I will send you the documents, you can read them. I mean,
Look, I still believe nobody should be required to take the vaccination. All right, so I don't know what else you want me to say other than that.
No, I just.
Unless you get 248 and talk to Tom Rentz, I'm 100%, that's what, if I was in the wrong position, Tom Rentz wouldn't have endorsed us. I am 100% in the medical freedom category because Tom Rentz, I follow Tom Rentz's program.
Well, we appreciate that. I just want to bring that up as another reason that maybe you haven't heard, but that's why, another reason why a lot of people don't want to take the shot, okay?
And by the way, just so you also know, my mother was a nurse for 60-some years, my sister's a nurse, my cousin's a nurse, my nephew's a doctor, my son's a doctor. I was in the healthcare field for 25 years, so I will tell you that, I mean, when it comes to healthcare, I hear it every day. My son was actually at Mount Sinai last year when March hit as an emergency room physician, and everybody that was coming in the emergency room was COVID. And he was the one that they made fun of. One of the other candidates, supporters, made fun of because my son had to wear a full mask going in because nobody in March of last year knew how bad COVID could be. All right? And to make fun of a physician who had to wear a full mask to protect himself was a little.
I got one more question here.
Can I switch the subject to transgender surgeries and just get your way in on where you would, I have a feeling I already know where you would stand on the SAFE Act to make it illegal to operate on children before they're 18 to change their gender.
Right, and I would also support, I think it's House Bill 91, that does not allow biological men to compete with women. If you're a biological man, you compete in men's sports. If you're a biological man, you use the men's bathroom. I mean, this should be pretty simple.
All right, we're going to take one last question, I believe.
Jen, let me address you because you basically contradicted what I said, and I want to tell you I agree with everything in your speech. And I knew Joe Knott was a man of the people. Now I know you came out of the people. But with respect, you're dead wrong on the vote. You even told the people how it works. In your county, you put in the thing and your ballot comes out, right? And you can check your ballot to make sure it's what you voted. But then you said you go over and you put it in this machine.
It counts it.
We don't know that it counts it. Those machines are run by Dominion, Hart, or ES&S. They have total control of the vote. The Board of Elections never challenges it. The news media never challenges it. If you don't make an issue, or somebody doesn't, so the people know what's happening, in these secret counts, we're going to wake up on the day after election and DeWine will have won by a large margin, even though I believe your poll. But we're going to find, so there's no checks and balances on Hart, Dominion, and ES&S. Whoever they hire, there just isn't. And I'm glad that I told Joe Knopf I would drive anywhere in Ohio to talk for a half hour to you two, even in front of the Board of Elections, so you can see we have no control over our vote anymore. They let Trump win Ohio, but he lost the election. In other words, they're not going to put Jerry Springer in every office. It would be too obvious. But since they can't get our guns, they're stealing our country as fast as they can by computer vote fraud. Thank you, and I'm eager to hear your response.
Look, I said all along that I'm an auditor, I'm a CPA. If there's evidence, we're going to look at it. First place to look at it is to do a good forensic audit, figure out what's going on, make some decisions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? One more over here?
Looks like there's two more. There's
Two more? Okay, well, can you take two more? Are you good on time? Okay. All right, well, let me get you first because I'm going to go quickly.
Yeah, I was an official at the polls, and there's no way for them to throw away paper ballots if there's Republicans that are working those polls. There's just no way it's going to happen.
Cameras.
Or cameras. There's other ways to check it. I just think paper is the only way to go, and I don't think we might stay in a couple extra hours to get that done.
Smaller precincts, we can count it.
Getting back on the election thing, there's several, Dr. Frank has spoken to this group and other groups that I've attended in the last year. We've heard different things that Mike Lindell has done, not so but in this whole thing.
He's so cool too.
Donald Trump and his people looking at as best they can the fraud that took place in the last election. And the conclusion they came to was quite simply what the gentleman just stated over there. Once it hits that machine, they can make it do anything. And you can lock the machines, you can put them in a vacuum tube, you can do anything you want. Pull out your cell phone right now. There's no air gaps, there's no nothing. They can do whatever they want to your personal cell phone at this second.
Right.
And I would ask that when you become governor, and I sincerely hope you do, that you would get in touch with Donald Trump and his team who have thoroughly looked into these issues and proven that there is only one way to keep election fraud honest, and that is to paper count the ballots. And they always come back with the argument, well, it's going to take months and years to count them. Are you aware that over in Europe they do that in one day?
Yes, yes.
And I would also like to add, just to counter you a little bit, I was a CPA, so I know numbers. I've audited,
Always a CPA.
I've audited like crazy, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But you're looking at the after the fact, which sometimes, as in this last batch, the ballots that were counted through the machines, the ballots that were actually counted were thrown away, and when they came in to do the forensic audits, there was nothing there to look at. The states had destroyed all that, sometimes literally the day before the auditor showed up.
Yes.
And if you would please maybe talk to his team and let them, they're going around the states now, but they're focusing on the ones where Trump had lost. Ohio, they have massive proof that the ballots in Ohio, what we did in Ohio is we tricked them. They had the machines putting in the Biden ballots just a tad above the Trump ballots. And when they counted them, every time you picked up a Trump or 5, 10, 15, 1,000, Biden would get just a little bit more, so that it was never a runaway. And what happened in Ohio, and this is where we did it, is we voted so many Trump votes that their machine couldn't come up with enough dead people and people who are no longer residents of the state of Ohio or whatever, and they ran out of fake ballots to feed the machines. And that's why Trump won in Ohio, because we beat the machines and the deceased and all the other ones that they were stuffing into the machines for us. That's why the 2 o'clock shutdown and that whole thing. I'm passing on a lot of what was that I've heard from the people who are actually doing this. And I would sincerely ask, not now, but when you become governor, that you have your team sit down and talk to these people so it will not happen again in the state of Ohio.
Well, you already heard that election integrity is one of our top 6 issues, so I'm just telling you what's there.
No, but if you would go back to the people who've already done all the work.
Did you get the one person back there? There was one person right in the back.
Well, there was somebody else that I guess.
I've got a big voice, I can tell you. You said you lost in 2018 by 150,000. In that same year in Kentucky, you saw Matt Bevin, who lost the governor's race. And if you watched the screen and you watched how the vote flipping occurred in that exact same race in 2018 in yours, and Kentucky was a Republican state in 2020. So I wonder if you shouldn't be sitting in the Senate right now.
Well, thank goodness I'm not. I'd rather be here fighting for the state of Ohio.
Okay, we got one more comment here.
So I just want to ask everyone to take a step back. My name's George Brenneman. I used to run the Cincinnati Tea Party back in the day, right? So I have some I'm sorry. I have some experience with politicians, right? I would ask you to take a look back. So the problem the Tea Party had was we could never get the groups to work together. It's exactly what you're seeing right now. We all have our little issues. What I can tell you is you get used to the politicians as soon as you meet them. The first time I met John Houston, it took 5 seconds, and it's like, this guy's a politician. I'm never gonna talk to this guy again. That's not what you're seeing here. These guys are different. I asked Joe to speak with my daughter and my son-in-law because I thought he had a way of connecting with the younger people. He spent 3 hours in our house. Politicians don't do that, okay? So what you're seeing is people who are trying to make a difference. We're not gonna agree on a million different topics. There's always gonna be the little things that split us up. Mike DeWine is destroying Ohio, pure and simple. I don't think anybody can disagree on that. There's only one person that can beat him. And we have to come together and do that, or we're gonna be stuck with 4 more years of a Democrat dictator. So I just ask for you to look deeper. These guys are not your average politicians. We've seen enough of them. You've heard their names mentioned. Just look deeper. I think you're gonna find something different here. That's all. Thank you. The other thing is on Sunday, there's a very similar event. We're gonna have a kickoff for all the state central committee meeting, central committee people. Jim's gonna be there on Sunday. It's on the table. It's at the Oasis Center in Loveland. Starts at 1 o'clock, the doors open. If you can come there, you'll have another opportunity to hear, ask your questions. You'll also meet the people that are running for precinct exec and state central committee, so thank you.
Okay, you want to close out?
Well, again, I want to thank you all. As Joe and I said, we've been traveling the state. This is the furthest point. While you're all tucked in bed, I'll still be in the car tonight, traveling back home, but that's okay. My goal is to get and make sure that each one of you get a chance to get to know me, to get to know Joe. Joe's sometimes in the other side of the state, I'm sometimes down here. But in the end, what we're trying to do is just change our state. And in the end, look, there are a lot of good people that run, and you'll hear a lot of things, but I would also tell you the other candidates. That's why we talked a little bit about Ron Hood. I mean, he was a Renacci guy until he was not the lieutenant governor. So you could ask him that question. I mean, if you ever see him, you ask him those questions. And Joe's another guy, he's in it for the right reasons, but he can't win. If you want, he told somebody, well, I might be able to get 20%. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, if you get 20%, you cause Mike DeWine to win, that just means we lose. Now, you've got to know me, I'm a family guy, you'll hear a lot of garbage, but in the end, there's no stronger family team than Jim Renacci and Joe Knopf. Joe's got his family with him. My wife, I'm not going to put her through 3.5 hours to drive with me, 3.5 hours back, and quite frankly, she'll go anywhere I want her to go, but she's the type of person that just wants DeWine gone, I can tell you that. So together, I'm hoping that you got to know me well enough that we can change the tide and we can end up taking this state back. And I promise you this, the freedoms you're looking for, you will get with Renacci and Knopf. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you so much. All right, another great meeting. Thanks.